Antinatalism is one of those philosophies that doesn't often enter mainstream conversations, yet it raises some of the most fundamental questions about life, morality, and existence itself. At its core, antinatalism is the belief that bringing new life into the world is morally questionable, and in many cases morally wrong. The idea challenges something most people take for granted, the assumption that having children is naturally good, desirable, or at least neutral. Instead, antinatalists suggest that procreation is not just a personal decision but an ethical one, with consequences that ripple through individual lives, society, and even the environment. To understand this perspective, it's worth looking at both why someone might embrace antinatalism and why others reject it. Those who defend antinatalism often begin with the argument of suffering. Life, they say, inevitably involves pain, whether it be physical illness, emotional turmoil, poverty, or loss. By choosing to have children, a parent guarantees that their child will experience some degree of this suffering. The South African philosopher David Benatar, one of the most well-known proponents of the view, argues in his book Better Never to Have Been that even the best possible life contains harm, and the absence of that life avoids harm entirely. In his reasoning, existence always carries a net negative, since pain is unavoidable, but the absence of life does not harm anyone. From this angle, not creating life is seen as an act of compassion, a way to prevent suffering before it begins. Another supporting point comes from the environmental and social concerns. Many antinatalists link their beliefs to overpopulation, climate change, and the depletion of resources. Every new human life consumes resources and contributes to the strain on the planet, from carbon emissions to food and water use. For those who see humanity's current trajectory as unsustainable, choosing not to procreate can be seen as both a personal and political stance, reducing one's impact and refusing to add more consumers to an already fragile system. Some also argue that antinatalism can create a space for addressing systemic inequalities, suggesting that fewer births can mean better allocation of resources to those who are already alive and suffering. However, critics of antinatalism argue that it neglects the positive aspects of existence. Life is not only suffering, but also joy, love, creativity, and growth. By refusing to bring new life into the world, one also refuses the possibility of happiness, discovery, and meaning. Many would argue that life's value lies precisely in the mix of pain and joy, and that the human condition is not defined by suffering alone. Parents often point to the deep bonds of love and fulfillment that children bring, experiences that cannot be replicated in any other ways. To opponents of antinatalism, avoiding life because of inevitable pain disregards the transformative power of resilience and human connection. There is also the question of choice and autonomy. Some believe that antinatalism imposes a kind of moral absolutism that restricts individual freedom. Procreation has been a fundamental part of human existence across cultures and eras, and for many, it is tied to identity, legacy, and community. To deny people the moral legitimacy of having children can feel like an attack on personal liberty and human tradition. In addition, many critics argue that the philosophy rests on assumptions that are impossible to fully prove, such as whether non-existence is truly preferable to existence, or whether the potential for joy outweighs the certainty of suffering. Beyond this, there is also the pragmatic critique. Antinatalism, if widely adopted, could result in the decline or disappearance of humanity altogether. Some see this as a contradiction, since philosophy depends on humans to think and argue about it in the first place. From this angle, antinatalism appears self-defeating, as a world where no new people are born would eventually eliminate both the problems antinatalists highlight and the ability to care about them in the first place. Supporters may counter that extinction is not inherently bad, but critics often see this as a nihilistic stance that undermines the progress and achievements of human history. In the end, antinatalism is less about providing clear answers and more about raising the unsettling but important questions. It asks us to think critically about the assumptions behind procreation, to examine the ethical weight of bringing new lives into the world, and to consider whether suffering is a necessary or acceptable cost of existence. At the same time, it challenges us to recognize the beauty, meaning, and resilience that life could bring, despite its inevitable hardships. Whether one sees antinatalism as an act of compassion or an overextension of pessimism, the philosophy forces us to confront what it really means to live, and whether creating life is a gift or a burden.